two songs that I played. That was Survivor and Freedom by the dopest, I'm sorry, not by the dopest historian, by Beyonce. I also played Power by Beyonce. These songs to me are representative, good songs to the person that I'm going to be highlighting today. I am the dopest historian checking in with you this afternoon for Women Wednesday. Today, I'm going to be talking about Queen Nanny of the Maroons. And I'm also going to get into the background of why I'm deciding to talk about her. And then I'm also going to highlight some other women whose birthdays and deaths happen in August. So to start about, let me get into a little background of why I chose to highlight Queen Nanny. So Queen Nanny is from Jamaica. And if you remember last week, I talked about Marcus Garvey and his contributions to the founding of Dope History Month. Marcus Garvey is also from Jamaica, and he is seen as the man that pretty much represents Jamaica in a historical sense. But Queen Nanny is not talked about as much as Marcus Garvey, and Queen Nanny predates Marcus Garvey more than 100 years, to be honest. She was most famous during the 1700s, and her story is like amazing. Like it blows my mind when we think about the Maroons as well as Queen Nanny of the Maroons. So if you never heard of the Maroons, I'm going to give a little bit background about them as well. But I want to get into this song by Nina Simone first called Obey a Woman. And what it's about is about an obey a woman. And that's what they called Queen Nanny, which was someone who, as you know, what voodoo is, it's kind of a rendition of voodoo. It's something that the Jamaicans would do, and it's called obeah, not voodoo. Pretty much you can think of it as an African tradition. But all right, you guys, I'm going to get into the next song. And I actually do see that you're actually probably going to listen to some Gladys Bentley. So give me a while to figure out the playlist. But basically what the playlist consists today is music that, uplifts the woman, inspires the woman to be a leader. And as well as, like I said, I'm going to put some Gladys Bentley in. Her birthday's tomorrow. We talked about her last week. But yeah, you guys enjoy as I prep the music of the Maroons. But first, let me get into the background of how I even got into the Maroons and discovering Queen Nanny. So I originally went to college in 2011, and basically, long story short, it didn't work out for me. Came back home to the crib. And it wasn't until I had my son that I realized, I'm going to have to figure out something, because I was working in corporate without a degree, and I simply wanted more money. And, they say more money, you got to get a degree. So, okay. So I'm in school. I'm now back in community college. I'm in community college trying to, pursue this degree so I can get more money at this time as a receptionist. So I'm thinking, or I'm trying to be on this trek to being like an admin assistant, executive assistant, something where, you do stuff, but not really, you know what I'm saying? But you still get a good, chunk of money. Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. But I remember my first semester back at HTC, I had an English assignment. And I don't really remember what the assignment was, but I know one of my main issues with school was I never liked the assignments that they gave. And so I would always put my own spin on it. I know you told me to write about okay, somebody important. For me, that means write about a historical person, right? I'm trying to find the dopest, interesting story that y'all never heard about this, but I'm about to tell y'all. I had no idea that this was, this is before a dopest historian, before a dopest history. I always was just trying to find a way to think outside of the box on assignments that I didn't necessarily want to do. So what I do remember is that I did come across the Maroons. And so I actually came across the Maroons before I came across Queen Nanny. And when I was reading about the Maroons, I was actually reading about the Maroons in Florida. And so when you read about the history of the Maroons, it can get a little confusing because the Maroons were located in different parts of the Caribbean, South America, and North America during the times of slavery. So when I first started reading into them, like I said, I was reading about the Florida Maroons, and basically they're the Maroons in the North America, Caribbean, and South America. What they have in common is that they were slaves, or those who were formerly enslaved, pretty much making their own villages and tribes in the jungles of the areas that they were in. So a lot of times they were responsible for slave uprisings. They would storm plantations, set fire to plantations, killing owners. The Maroons were not to be played with, right? And their main claim to fame, right, was that, the colonizers, the settlers, they were unable to stop them from ravaging their plantations and stealing slaves and bringing them back to their land so that they could fight for more freedom, right? The Maroons were they were well versed with the land. So they were, like I said, they were able to hide in the jungles. That was like their main defense system, was to, attack and then retreat into the jungles that they were known in. When the white people tried to, come into their jungle area, they usually were met with disease, often had to go into combat and would lose because they didn't know the area. They didn't know what was going on. Like, they would think sometimes there were reports of Maroons coming from the trees, or, they were just like, they were, when white people wrote about them, they called them savages, but we now recognize them as being experts in guerrilla warfare, like real life, okay? Like, they was not to be played with. And those that were really not to be played with were those from Jamaica. The Jamaican Maroons, baby, they was not playing, okay? Jamaica was the largest island of the British Empire Caribbean holdings. And so with that, when we say the Maroons, I want to especially express that it was not just one big group. There were different groups, and especially on Jamaica, the island of Jamaica, they had two specific groups. They had one, I believe it was like the Leland and then Windward, and that's pretty much just a separation of where they were on the island, like the west side and the east side. And so Queen Nanny was the leader of the Windward side. And so there's many, how can I say this? There's many sayings and renditions of who Queen Nanny was. And to be honest, her story is mostly oral legend. There wasn't much stuff written down about her. Again, this is in the 1700s. This is before the United States became the United States, right? This is when British is ruling, Spain is ruling, Portugal is ruling, right? Ain't no US of A, because the white people wasn't even, we ain't even gonna get on that. But yeah, we're talking about the 1700s. And if they don't want to write good things about us now, they wasn't writing nothing great about the person that was whooping their butt in the 1700s, okay? They barely want to give Toussaint his props in regards to the revolution of Haiti, but we're not going to get into that. We're going to continue on Queen Nanny. So, like I said, I wanted to express that this is an oral story, mostly passed down through the descendants of Queen Nanny and those that lived on the island. There have been people that, of course, that have thrown in their lives. So I'm just going to give you the generic idea of who Queen Nanny was and what she stood for. The specifics of, okay, was she born in Jamaica? Was she born in Africa? Or was she born enslaved? Or was she not born enslaved? Those are things that you may want to look into yourself, because again, there are stories that says she was born in Ghana. There are stories that says she was born in Jamaica. There are stories that says she was enslaved. There were stories that says she was always free. But there are certain consistencies with Queen Nanny that you cannot deny. But I'm not going to bore you out with all the background information. We're going to get into some music here. And when I come back, we're going to get more deeper into Queen Nanny. Happy Dope History Month birthday to Gladys Bentley. I got into some of her history last week. So if you missed that, you can check that recap on YouTube. That's Dope It's History on YouTube, where we replayed or recapped the history of Gladys Bentley. So let's get back into Queen Nanny. Whether she was born in Africa or Jamaica don't matter. What we know is that she was that woman, okay? Remembered for her determination, her grit, her focus, her leadership to bring together the island of Jamaica to rise against the British. She was not to be played with, baby. And honestly, one of the things that I do want to know is that some say that Queen Nanny wasn't just one person. They say that it was, the women of those villages that led them to freedom, to better life, right? It wasn't, they say that it wasn't just one woman. There were different accounts of somebody killing Queen Nanny, right? But that could just be the haters being the haters, acting like they killed somebody that they didn't. But legend is that, there was a specific Queen Nanny to celebrate, which was of the first war of the Maroons. But then other nannies, queen nannies, or nannies in general, would come up as well, as Jamaicans continue to fight for their independence into the 18 and 1900s. Queen Nanny was a symbol of unity and strength for her people during times of crisis. She would guide the Maroons through the most intense period of resistance against the British, which was 1725 to 1740. It was her and her brothers who would bring freedom to those of the Maroons. And when she received that freedom, they also let her keep 500 acres of land. And it's very interesting because to this day, that area that Queen Nanny fought for, they are still independent. They are independent from Jamaica and the British ruling. They never were under the British rule because they defeated the British.